All right, folks, welcome to Racin Nation. This is Yoda, and tonight I've got a guest. I've known Mr. O'Gorman for quite a while, and we're going to dig into Tom O'Gorman of Tomo Racing, and we're going to dig into his past, find out where he's been, how he got started, what he's doing now. He's doing some amazing things in Pirelli World Challenge. He's a driver, coach, and high-performance driving instructor for a couple different, I believe, manufacturers and programs out there with the Sports Car Club of America. He's just driving everything he can get his hands on these days, and quite honestly, that's one of the reasons why you're going to like this guy. Is there's no discrimination. There's literally, if it's got wheels, an engine, and a steering wheel, you'll find Tom trying to find his way behind the steering wheel. So without further ado, I've got Tom O'Gorman on the other end of the phone, and we're going to start talking about where we actually met. And I know it was forever ago, Tom, but you remember the story a little better than I do. You're younger than me. Your memory's better. Where exactly was it? It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's awesome. Excited to be on with you. So this is one of my favorite stories that I seriously tell the story all the time because it's led up to kind of my breakthrough in my work career. But we actually met playing online video games. We were playing R Factor. We were driving vintage cars at Mid-Ohio, and a guy sends me a message and says, "You look like you've driven this track before. Have you?" And I had at that point. I think I was 17, and I had done one track day there, but I had been spectating there for my entire life, and obviously that was you that had asked me that. We got to talking. We found out we're both autocrossers, became connected on social media, and kept up, and ended up meeting in person. And you basically ended up getting me one of the jobs that I have now. So it's when people ask me, "How did you get this job? You got the coolest job in the world." Well, playing online video games.
And honestly, that's led to so many open doors for me as well. The whole simulation community, it's a lot of people look at it that don't really understand it, and they're like, you're sitting there in front of a TV or in front of 3 monitors, and you've got a fake steering wheel and pedal set, and you're playing around with these toys, and I'm like, no, it's there's a lot more to it than that, and it's
absolutely, yeah, it totally depends on how you approach it. I mean, if you want to go play like Need for Speed and have that zoned out like gaming, just go zone out for 2 hours, you can do that. But if you're playing the right games and you're treating it the right way, you can totally treat it like a real thing, and it can be a great training tool.
And you and I have both used it for that, definitely, over the years. And after that Mid-Ohio experience, myself and another one of our friends, Matt Williams, we sat down one day and realized that all of us were running solo. All of us were running SCCA autocross at the time, and we sort of realized that it would be really cool to use Live for Speed and the autocross editor in the parking lots that it had and recreate some of the real-life courses and national courses that we were running back then. And we got you involved in that, and quite honestly, you crushed all our hopes and dreams. It wasn't... It was really a lesson in humility. I'm living in Alabama. That's where the humidity comes from.
Yeah, it's on the mind.
It was seriously a lesson in humility. It was crazy watching you bend the car through the cones, even on the virtual side of things. And then I finally got to meet up with you at an autocross in real life and realized that the skill set translated. It wasn't just something where you were really fast in the sim realm and not in real life. And where did you get your start in solo in the real world? I mean, we could talk about video games all day long. We could talk about simulation all day long. But what was the first car that you ran in solo? And was that your first introduction to racing, or was it karting earlier than that? Or how did you get involved in real life?
Yeah, my first experience actually competing and driving a vehicle in real life was autocross. After I had turned 15 and a half, I was old enough to get my temporary license. My dad had started doing it the year before I was able to drive. He had a 1999 Miata, as one does when you begin autocrossing. You have a Miata and you go take it in autocross. So we started driving it together, and so I guess that would have been around 2007 when I was, like I said, 15 and a half. Before that, I had done the only karting I had done was kind of indoor karting and, the higher speed stuff, and maybe, every 2, 3, 4 months kind of thing, nothing serious. And then like we talked about, it's all video games. And at that point I was, a kid with nothing better to do but come home after school and play 6 or 8 hours of sim racing games. And I think that really prepared me more than most people might give credit for to hop behind the wheel of a car. And, I wasn't prepared for the feelings that a car would give you through the butt, but the preparation for understanding where a car needs to go and what you need to do with a car to get the most out of it and accomplish, fast laps or things like that. I think that prepared me a lot for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, high level sim, as far as racecraft and just the concentration level, the focus needed to go out and perform lap in, lap out. It's definitely there. It's iRacing, R Factor, even some of the newer titles, Assetto Corsa, Forza. I mean, and Gran Turismo, like you mentioned, the guys that perform at the top level in all of those titles, they've got true racecraft. You can't deny that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's no way to deny it, because regardless of the physics of the actual game, regardless of whether or not that car drives like it's a real car, if you're playing online racing against other people, those other people are going to make the same mistakes that they would in real life. You're going to make the same mistakes you would in real life. You're going to treat it just like it's a real race if you're in the right mindset. So you can really learn to race against other people through the online situation. Obviously, there's a lot of consequences when things go wrong.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
That's also part of something you have to get used to when you switch to like the real stuff that costs real money. But yeah, it's totally, and now it's becoming our true path into motorsports. You got GT Academy, and iRacing has the MX-5 Cup Shootout and things like that, where you can go and actually get a path into, a potential pro racing career, which is even so far and beyond what I thought was possible, but it's becoming legit now.
It's what we knew was coming for the last 10, 15 years, and it's really cool to be. It's really cool to be still involved in that community and seeing it happen. Going back to autocross, you started autocrossing with your dad, and I'm going to throw this out there just because there might be a chance that Mr. Joe O'Gorman might listen to this. When was the first time you outran him, and how did that go?
It was actually the first time we drove together.
Oh,
we were at an Austin Healey and Alfa Romeo Club autocross in a little dinky parking lot in Cincinnati, and it happened on the first time out. So he was extremely gracious and more than happy to have me back the next time. There wasn't any. I didn't go to bed without dinner that night or anything like that. So, but it was always fun.
At least you're not going to tell us you did.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
I'll also get no dinner tonight.
That's probably the truth. It's easier to do it to you now than it would have been back then.
Yeah, exactly.
So you went from the Miata, and I'm assuming you ran that for a little while, and then some folks started inviting you to drive all manner of machinery, and I can definitely relate to that. I've been very fortunate to drive so many different cars over the years. And what was the first time you actually hopped in another car? Did you go to a tour and do that, or were you doing that on a local level first, or how'd that work out?
The first time I ever jumped in someone else's car was probably, it was a friend of mine in the Cincinnati area. It was actually an STS CRX that has kind of become the most passed around car in the community that I know of, because it was built as a GRM challenge car by one of my best friends now, Scott Giles and Renee Hines, built the car as a GRM challenge car, converted it into an STS car after they were done with that, sold it to another friend of mine, Chase Heikela, that's who I drove it with. Then moved on to Jeff Chambers, who we can talk about as my enabler, and then moved on to my best friend now, Dave Montgomery. So basically everybody who's owned this is a huge part of my life in the community, so it's really funny that it's been passed around. But that was the first time I hopped in, and then the first time I jumped in for a national tour was the year later, and it was with Jeff Chambers, and then his co-driver Gus Hammerly. They were campaigning 2 identical STS Miatas at that time, and they would use one as the primary and one as like a test kind of mirror image car. They would go testing with them both and kind of figure out what worked on one, and then they kind of had the one that was the primary, so they always had this backup car. And we had done some 2 indoor karting races together, and we won both of them, the big long enduros, and they were like, and I was 14 and 15 in those 2 races, so when I turned 16 and could actually drive the car by myself in a national tour, they were like, hey, why don't you come drive this backup car? And ended up going out and winning that national tour while they were running the primary car. So that was super cool. That was kind of like my first opportunity to go and immerse myself in the world of national solo and start to get to know people and see the serious side of autocross, if you want to say that. You know, the people who really hit the big events and hit the competition hard and really make a full racing effort more than a hobby out of autocross. So that's where I kind of realized, this is something that you can actually go do like a lot, and it gets exposure and attention, and it's a lot of fun, and all the people are really cool, and that was kind of when I guess I was like, if I had been addicted before, I was fully on, fully hooked at that point.
Can totally relate. I've been autocrossing, unfortunately, longer than you've been on the planet, and it just augments everything else that I've been fortunate enough to do. I'll never stop autocrossing. The level of competition at a national event, whether it's a tour or the national championships, if you've never gone to see it, if you can't believe that, you know, these 50 cars are going to run and 15 of them in this particular class, whatever it may be, at the end of 2 days of competition are probably going to be covered by 2 tents, maybe 3. It's incredible. And so you won the national tour in that car, and then was it a year or 2 later that you hopped into the Porsche? Was the Porsche the first car you won? That's the car you won your national championship in, right? Or no?
Yeah, that was my first solo national championship. There's also Pro Solo is kind of considered a separate entity. And I had won a Pro Solo championship the year before. But that was actually 2013 was that year. The first event was in 2008, so there was a big window of time in the middle where I guess I was extremely lucky in that I was always able to be the co-driver and never really own my own car as a serious campaign effort. So I think I lucked out and kind of got a good reputation as someone who was easy to work with and could hop in cars and not, beat on stuff. And I was working enough that I could kind of afford to, pay other people's entry fees in exchange for them letting me drive my car. And autocross is awesome because it's so low impact and so low risk that you can be really generous with tossing your keys around. And
yeah, absolutely.
Chances of something happening to your car are very low versus if you're at a track or something like that. So getting into autocross, I guess, was really lucky for me there because I got to experience literally every type, make, model, drivetrain, aspiration, everything of car between 2008 and 2013, 14, and I got to hop in all sorts of different things and build a network of people that now I know that are incredible because I've driven with most of them and I've been at events with most of them and as I said, getting introduced to the national scene so early on, I got really addicted to that. So that network is not just it's not an Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana local thing. It's a nationwide type thing. So obviously that's how you and I met, with you being in Alabama and me being in Ohio. We still go to the same national event and we can meet each other and then, still be talking 7-8 years later.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, the community, the motorsports community on the whole is pretty small. I mean, chances are wherever you're at a racetrack, doesn't matter whether you're at a solo or a rally or, a drag race or a NASCAR race or whatever, chances are if you're walking around the paddock and you're talking to people in the industry, you're going to know the same people. It's that part of being involved in motorsport I've always found fascinating, is really the circle's not that huge. I'm going to go back to what you were mentioning earlier, though, about getting to hop in and out of so many different cars. And that happens a lot. Like you said, in the solo community, it's easier to toss the keys around there than it is, at 150 mile an hour plus full racetrack. I've always, and I think it's because of my solo background, I don't have a favorite drive line. I don't have a favorite, I'm not, it's got to be all-wheel drive, or it has to be rear-wheel drive, and it has to be, 500 plus horsepower. I get equal enjoyment driving a stock class, like an H-stock Mini Cooper, as I do a 1,000 horsepower Viper. And I'm curious if you are the same. Do you have a favorite config, or you just want the keys?
I'm not picky, so I will. Just today, I went autocross today in Cincinnati, and I drove a Civic and 2 different Miatas and a Mustang, and that was a low car count day for me. So
yeah.
I'll drive anything, and I have favorites all over the place. I have found that I tend to like mid-engine cars most often out of the mid-engine cars that I drive. I like a car that turns in really hard, and I like to I don't mind chasing it through the middle of the corner and getting the power down early and digging out. So I like a little bit of lift off oversteer and then just kind of setting the back end with the throttle. But I also started, I started in a Miata, but my real experience, the majority of it early on was front-wheel drive stuff. Through kind of like 2010, 11, 12, I ran a bunch of CRXs and Civics. I've always kind of been in Hondas, has been the trend for my entire, time in the sport. So I took a while to get away from the front-wheel drive guy thing, but pretty soon found myself in Corvettes and Mustangs and Camaros, and just along the way you kind of get to experience those, and it's like, oh, this horsepower's fun. And then all of a sudden you drive a Nissan 240SX with big slicks on, you're like, ooh, turbos are fun.
Yeah.
And then you drive something with aero, and you're like, all right, okay. So, and then it's hard, like you said, you just as much fun in the Mini as you do in something crazy.
I just love cars.
Definitely hard to go back to a Mini after you've had, I had kind of a wake-up call like 2 years ago. It was like I'd been driving big, fast cars. I was driving the Porsche, I was driving the Corvette, and I was driving a 240SX, and these are all aero cars with slicks and everything, and I jumped in a street tire, maybe a Miata or a Focus ST or something, I don't even remember. It was like, oh, I don't remember how to do this. So it's kind of like, you relearn things, but, yeah, so the answer to your original question, I think mid-engine tends to be my favorite, but I'm not picky.
Have you driven the 987 Cayman S or Cayman R in anger?
I have not.
Oh, dear God. If you love mid-engine...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that is the car that I compare every other car I get into. I compare Ferraris and Lamborghinis and just all kinds of exotics that I've been fortunate enough to drive. McLaren MP412C, I have flogged one of those. And every time I get out of one of those cars, I'm like, I'd still rather have a Cayman.
Yeah. So I can relate to that because, so skipping ahead a couple of years in the timeline, in 2013, my friend Dave Montgomery, we've been co-driving CRXs for a while, kind of through 11 and 12, and then in 13, his dream car came up for sale, and it's like they had been building it, and it just kind of like was the perfect situation. They ended up with this 914-6, which was race prepped, I think built as a GT2 race car, but never road raced. 2.9 liter, fuel injected, wide body, bi-ply slicks. It was a F prepared autocross.
That car is gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah. To this day, it's just my favorite car. Something about the moment my butt hit the seat of that car and the first corner, it was like we were best friends, and that was like, and that's now the benchmark. And I don't know that anything will surpass that. So
I haven't gotten there yet. I mean, the little bit of time that I spent with Porsche as an instructor, and they ruined me. They absolutely ruined me for everything else. I would take a Cayman R today. If you threw me the keys to a 458 and the keys to a Cayman R, I'd take the Cayman R.
Mm-hmm.
There might be something wrong with us. I don't know, but that's the case.
You wouldn't take the Ferrari, sell it, pocket the change, and buy yourself a Cayman R?
Well, if it was literally, you can take the keys to one of these, but you can't go home and sell it. You have to keep it forever. I'm in the Porsche. If I can exploit the system like you just mentioned, then sure, I'll take the Ferrari and buy two Porsches.
Loopholes, man. I'm all about loopholes.
Loopholes aren't bad. Loopholes aren't bad at all. All right, so let's fast forward. Let's go through the solo years. Which, I mean, honestly, if you're anything like me, you're going to be competing at solo for the rest of your life, whether it be pro or just autocross in general, because we love it. We absolutely love it. And it does augment the skill set that you need to get out on the big track. We can go back through time and point to Peter Cunningham and Randy Popst and countless others that have, Hike Cotter, a whole bunch of other guys that have come up through solo, and gals that have come up through solo, went on to pro road racing careers. And there's something that floats around in the solo community that road racers don't like to hear, but it is typically true. Great autocrossers typically make great road racers, and it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go from autocross to road racing and talk about how you got involved with a particular Honda and the Pirelli World Challenge and what you've done over the last year to a little more in that series. How'd you get involved? I mean, what was the path? I know you did a little road racing before PWC, but where'd you go to first, and how did you get involved with PWC?
Yeah, so it starts after 2013. I kind of felt like I ticked the box of autocross, and I kind of knew I wasn't going to go any further with autocross, and a road racing. Road racing was always the end goal, so I knew that was going to be on the plate at some point, and I had kind of felt like I needed to start moving quick if I'm going to go into the road racing world. So I ended up purchasing an ITC car, and I did a season in 2014 with a 1991 Civic. 4-speed Civic base, nice and simple, kind of weighted myself in. The criteria for the car was to just basically be as low maintenance and reliable as a race car can be. And that car was everything that it was as advertised. I didn't have to touch it. I didn't have to touch it setup-wise. I didn't have to touch it other than, changing the oil and basic maintenance. So I wanted to make it as easy as myself as possible getting in. I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. So,
right.
But I knew I didn't want to be in that car for more than a year, because if you're looking at a motorsports career, there's not a lot of difference between an autocrosser and an ITC road racer. On the totem pole, which in motorsports there's unfortunately a totem pole. You have to do more than that to earn the respect of people in higher circles, I guess I would say. So I knew I needed the experience to wade into road racing, but I didn't want it to be another 7 or 8 year endeavor like autocross was.
Right.
And I knew I could keep autocrossing, and I knew it was something that I wouldn't have to give up. So I did that season in 2014, learned a lot, was successful with, there's also the whole thing of, okay, I've only ever autocrossed. What if I get on the track and I'm not very good at this? So, there's a little bit of self-proving going on as well when you go out on your first road race. It's like, all right, how am I going to handle this? There's a lot more going on here. So got more comfortable on the track. I was actually lucky enough to kind of use the alternative licensing system that SCCA has been starting to experiment with. So based on my merits of having done a couple of Lemons races and plenty of track days, on top of, at that point, I had started doing quite a bit of indoor karting, having my dad open an indoor kart track in 2011. So we'd had that open for a little while, and then all the autocross on top of that. They basically gave me a road racing license. And I didn't have to go through schools or anything like that, so they really made it as easy as they could to let me wade in there as well. So after that season, I knew I needed to continue to move on. kind of weighed all the options of going along the lines of, as reliable as possible, as competitive as possible, as affordable as possible, and landed on B-Spec. So the B-Spec rule set is probably the smallest rule set in the SCCA rulebook, and it's also shared word for word identically with the Pirelli World Challenge TCB rule set. So
right.
It's the exact same cars, and the reason that it was put into World Challenge was to allow people to take their club racing cars and move into pro racing without having to changing as little as possible and as affordably as possible. So that ended up being the big selling point for going there. And having raced Hondas from the start through, now I had the Honda Civic that I raced on the road courses. I was doing all the research, and everything was pointing towards a Honda Fit. So I knew that they were going to be inexpensive and reliable. So as far as the class goes, if you're getting a Mini, you're going to be dealing with Mini engineering and Mini costs and things like that. So I ended up finding, totally by luck, a friend pointed out one for sale on eBay for me, and within an hour of that eBay sale being posted on my Facebook wall, I had bought a Pirelli World Challenge Honda Fit.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize it came about that quick.
Yeah, no, it was less than that. I was about 49 minutes from the time I opened my Facebook app to see that was on there, that I had put the buy it now, click the buy it now button, and so that's a heck of an impulse buy.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I knew that it was, when it popped up, and the price that it was at was less than you could build one for. It just seemed to be all the right things, and the more I've learned about the car, it actually has a lot of pedigree in the class. It was campaigned by Shea Racing, who are one of the big names in PWC, and it was just a really well-maintained car. So I went from an ITC car that needed very little to be competitive and treated me well, to a B-Spec car that needed very little and, put me towards the front and did well for me. So there was a lot more movement very quickly between 2013 to 2015 from autocross to PWC than there was from 2007 to 2013 getting my start, I guess.
Well, it kind of had to be. I mean, there definitely kind of had to be with the path that you were on. And now you're going into 2016 in PWC and had some pretty amazing success at COTA for the first races of the year, I should say, with your sponsor, who I'll let you name. I know you're awfully proud to be a part of them, and they should be proud to have you on the team. And you had that success at COTA with last year's car, and there's a new car coming. So if you want to talk about COTA a little bit and your sponsor and having the success in the old car and what you think the new car is going to bring to the table for the rest of 16 for you, have at it. Mike's yours.
Yeah, so in 15, I ended up, the car that I bought was a 2010 Fit, and the 2015 Fits were just coming out at that time, but they hadn't been classed in the class yet at that point. So my first 2 weekends racing in PWC in 2015 were with a 2010 spec car, which was the most current generation at that point. And it was competitive at that time. It was a great car. But with the new 2015s coming out, HPD actually showcased the car at Mid-Ohio while I was racing there. We kind of got to see the car in action, see what it could do, and ended up, that was kind of like the next logical step for us. So I started to look into that, and another driver that we were working with, or that we raced with actually last year, was David Daughtery, who also was running the same generation Fit that I was. And we both found out that we were both looking for a new Fit, and ended up kind of partnering together. And we've been working with Honda and with each other to kind of get a new car ready to go. And unfortunately, we didn't get it ready in time for COTA, but we'll have it ready in time for the next race at Mosport. But luckily, I still had the 2010 spec car sitting around, so we kind of freshened that up in about 3 days. And when we realized, crap, this isn't going to be done. So we freshened the car up as quickly as we could and brought it down there, and ended up being a really, really, really strong weekend. So when we knew that we weren't going to have the new car there, and we also found out there were a couple little rule changes, and, just the fact that we took so little time to actually get the car ready and kind of threw everything together, we knew it may not be 100% competitive on all-out pace. So I kind of did my best to play strategy and play the high-speed chess match and keep myself in the races as long as I could, and ended up coming out with 2 second-place finishes. And I'm second in the points going into the second round. So
with the old car. You did that with the old car. And is the new car, have you had a chance to test the new car?
No, we haven't had the new car to the track yet. But from what we understand, it delivers power a lot differently. It'll be a lot more torquey out of the slower corners, which really helps our cars, given how low power they are. So part of what makes our class so interesting is the cars don't recover from mistakes very well. So having a little extra oomph in the mid-range should help us recover a little faster. And so the car will definitely be faster, is what we're hoping. And so we've been working with, like I said, with David and Honda. But this year, we're really trying to showcase SCCA Track Night in America. So they are. We started up last year, and it actually just kind of came together as a group of old autocross friends who ended up being working together on this program. But it came out of SCCA's experiential department, and Hayward Wagner is the manager or the director of that program at the SCCA, and just kind of put this whole thing into motion. It's basically an evening track day for you to come and enjoy your car on a racetrack in the most low pressure, low barrier of entry way that you possibly can. So we try to make it as plug and play as possible, as easy as possible, just to get your street car on the track and just go drive. And I love being involved with it because I race in Pirelli World Challenge, and I go in autocross, and I do all that for the exact same reason those people go and want to come drive their car for an hour after work or what, and blow off some steam, just because it's so much fun just to go and drive your car, regardless of how you're doing it. So we really targeted it at new people who have never driven on tracks before, and we want to kind of start a whole new community and generation of people who are, just driving enthusiasts and just love performance driving regardless of how they like to do it, whether they want to be in competition or whether they just want to go, they want to drive on that back road without any speed limits, and we're just supplying the back road. So I love being a part of that, and the energy after a group of novices who have never driven on a racetrack before come off the track after their first session is so far and beyond the energy of any racing group or any student that you've just seated with or anything like that. It's just it's an electric group of 30 people who just had the time of their lives, who had never experienced that before, and now they're completely hooked.
Yeah, you don't realize how amazing it is until that first time you get out there, and
exactly.
The program's amazing.
What that felt like, and it's like, okay, I just gave those people that experience, or I helped give those people that experience, and it's incredible to do. So. So they've been helpful in getting me, in World Challenge, and it's been a lot of fun working with them.
So you've got Track Night in America as a sponsor on the new car for 2016. You're also are you still dealing with the helmet company? Are you still working with those guys, or where's?
Yep. Yeah. So Black Armor Helmets is actually the team that I'm running with. Black Armor Helmets is, in my words, the best combination of a high-end carbon fiber helmet and an affordable helmet. So it's their products start between $500 and $600 for a full carbon fiber helmet. Which, if you know prices of carbon fiber helmets, they can get up into the multiple thousands.
Into the $5,000 range plus? Yeah,
guys like us who are running on a budget, regardless of what level, can't afford a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 carbon fiber helmet, but we can afford a $600 carbon fiber helmet. So I actually am connected to them, again, through autocross. A couple of old autocross friends run that company, and we've stayed connected through the years, and they had been running in World Challenge already. So they were big proponents of B-Spec, and they helped me kind of pick that class as where I wanted to be. And when I came into World Challenge, we basically kind of teamed up, and we go to the track and run as a team. So on top of me running as myself, and for the driver championship, we're also competing for a team championship for Black Armor helmets. So what I love about that is it's basically their marketing campaign. They don't do advertising, and they don't do dealing through different companies or different sales or whatever. You can't go into a shop in most cities and go buy a Black Armor helmet like you can a Bell or a G-Force, but their marketing campaign and their advertising campaign is we're out here on the track, we're racing with our own products, and you can too, and so I think that's super cool. It
speaks volumes, and I know a ton of people that have them, and honestly, my next helmet will be one.
Yeah, they're definitely becoming this. I don't want to say necessarily underground, but maybe that's the right word. There's a whole community of people, and it's becoming a lot bigger than I realized, because all of a sudden you start seeing them places, and it's like, okay, this isn't like it's not like 100 people have these. A lot of people have these, and everybody loves them.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see the growth of that as well.
You're part of that movement, and that's not a bad place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your sponsors set. You're also rolling out there, I would presume, with full throttle on the car some this year as well. As you're using that kart track to its fullest advantage, and keeping yourself in shape with as much seat time in the kart as you possibly can, which it's not a bad thing. I'm experiencing that for myself now. I can't wait to watch you at Mossport, man, and I wish you nothing but the best. Like you said earlier in the interview, we've known each other for 7 or 8 years now. I've gotten to watch you progress from just basically knowing you on R Factor all the way through, oh my God, this dude's winning, or he's doing incredibly well in a professional series. The next step, are you already looking at the next step? Are you thinking about maybe getting into one of those Accords that Honda Manufacturing Alabama has helped put that program together with HPD? Are you thinking about that as a next step, sticking with Honda, or just don't know right now?
Absolutely already starting to think about the next stuff. The great thing is, having kind of picked the Honda path, they have a lot of paths to choose from. So obviously the Accords and the Civics are running now. Obviously the real-time guys running the TLXs. Hopefully there's cool stuff coming with the new generation Civic and the new SIs, maybe the new Type R, and the NSX is coming out. So there seems to be a plethora of potentials on the horizon, and I'm really looking forward to exploring that at its fullest. So, trying to take it as far as I can.
I think you've got a very, very bright future in front of you, and I just want to say thanks for spending some time with us tonight, and letting the Racing Nation know who you are and where you've come from and where you're heading for the rest of 2016 and beyond. Tonight, this has been Tom O'Gorman on the Racing Nation live blog. This is Sean Yoder. I just want to say thanks again to Tom. Check out all the sponsors that he mentioned throughout the interview. Everybody that he is running on his car, nothing but the best, man. Nothing but the best companies out there on his car. It's just really, really good stuff. Again, thanks for spending some time with us tonight, Tom. We really appreciate it. And good luck in the rest of the Pirelli World Challenge for 2016.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sean, for having me on. You've opened a lot of doors for me, and I really appreciate it. So that means a lot. So,
Hopefully I can keep doing that in the future.
Looking for me online at PomoRacing.com, at Pomo Racing on any of the apps, and I try to be as spammy as I can when I'm racing to make sure everyone knows what's going on. So, but yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.
Look for the perfect hair and the blue sunglasses.
There it is.
Thanks a lot, Tom. For Racing Nation, I'm Sean Yoder. We really appreciate you guys listening. Look for us next week. We'll have another one of these next week. I'm not going to tell you who it is just now. I think we're going to be back to the Simterview process next week with another gentleman who is not afraid to drive a little bit of everything. Again, Sean Yoder for Racing Nation. You guys have a great rest of the weekend. We'll talk to you soon.